I know. Welcome to episode 18 of No Traps, No Glory, or if in this instance we should call it Full Sun, No Vision. But we're coming again from our venerable producer's household, from his deck, after some delicious steaks. And today we're brought to you by Kostritzer Schwarzbier. They don't pay for anything, but still brought to you by it. It's motivating us. So as we said, leaving off in episode 18, today should be a somewhat special podcast, as we're going to go over a fairly philosophical or a stoic sort of line of questioning that we pose. So myself and Officer Basciano, we were talking in the gym one day, and however it came about, I don't recall, but nonetheless it came about. And we were saying, ultimately rested upon the conclusion, what are 3 life lessons that weightlifting teaches you? Now, the premise of this podcast have long been in relation to that weightlifting is essentially a metaphor for life, and your time on the platform, your time training, your time in competition really lends to life as a greater whole, and so too those lessons that you learn in those arenas carry over to other aspects of your life. So with that, he and I were just saying how it would be interesting to ask a few people what they thought and the answers they'd come up with and such. So I took the initiative, and that's what I did. So being that I have, I guess, a few friends internationally, if you will, I decided to pose them with the questions, as well as domestic, and just see what their responses were. And many people that I've asked, I mean, granted, a small sample of who I contacted, but nonetheless, it was a good sample, and most everybody that I've asked have either competed at World Championships or both the Olympics. So it's a pretty high-level group that I've asked the question to. And I appreciate those who responded back to me, very much so. Especially because most everybody that responded back, well, not most everybody that responded back, their insights were insightful in some ways. Some were very in-depth and very passionate with their answers, which are incredible. While also, I can't, I mean, it would be boring not necessarily that boring, I would find it interesting, but I'm not going to read verbatim every response that people have given me. I'll post that on the website, or will there be a link in the comments below, Mr. Producer?
And then show notes.
In the show notes, where do the show notes arrive?
They'll be below. Just point down. Say
show notes are right here.
Or an Audible.
There should be a link that pops up, or if there's not a link that pops up, you should be able to scroll down on this YouTube page here, or if you're on SoundCloud, go on YouTube. Or anyway, you'll have access to it. We'll say that. We'll make it evident where it's going to be.
It'll be in the notes on SoundCloud.
It'll be in the notes on SoundCloud. So, I'd like to get into some of these responses that we have. So, okay, now, to start this, so here are all, I printed everything up, all the responses that I have.
Nobody can see that.
No one's meant to see that, Mr. Producer. But one thing I will say, and like I said earlier, granted, my sample size is small, but with the exception of Sarah Robles, which, hi Sarah, she's I'd say a good friend. We speak somewhat frequently, infrequent to frequent, however you want to make that. That doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there. So anyway, one of my lifters who I got started lifting, she now trains, moved back to Texas, and now trains with Sarah on a consistent basis. Sarah's a very nice lady. But I will say, we okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, sorry, I just kicked the camera, everybody. One thing I will say that I thought was very interesting is that of most everybody that I've asked, again, the small sample that I took, I'm putting a caveat out there, is that just about everybody internationally that I've asked was enthusiastic and got back to me promptly with an answer. Just about anyone domestic or American weightlifters, with the exception of Sarah Robles, did not answer back, even with messages being seen, like confirmed, like either Instagram, who I've contacted, or Facebook, however I contacted them. Most all of the American weightlifters that I contacted just did not respond back, and I thought that was very interesting. I actually said that to Viv from Everyday Lifters, and she was saying how she actually heard of that before. With someone else, I forget who she was mentioning, but saying how she's heard that before, almost as American lifters, I don't know, whether they don't want to talk to people or whatever it may be. But I think that's an interesting thing to mention. So with that, I'm going to say, America, take the stick out of your butt. All right. So moving on. First off, the first person to get back to me was our friend Max Lang from Germany, and he gave a short and pithy response, and it was very good. You know, overall, most all the responses that I have, you could find that there's a common theme. I meant to bring it with me today, but a copy of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations that I have.
I have it.
Oh, you do have it. Mr. Producer has it. Maybe you should strict that one. He has it.
No, we're leaving that in.
All right, good. So he has the book, and for those who have either read Meditations or familiar with Marcus Aurelius, it's essentially the premise of Meditations and the philosophy of Stoicism is maintaining equanimity, keeping calm, controlling the things that you can, letting go the things that you can't control, and governing your life by what you ultimately can govern on your own, and keeping a mindset to where you don't let things affect you in a negative fashion. And a lot of the responses that I got from this have led to me to really equate the two as being synonymous, if you will. So let's say, starting with our good friend Max. Are you going to put links and pictures up? Can I point to him, like, if I go like this and say Max?
It's just going to come up over the whole screen.
Cool.
I'm not that talented.
All right, well, talent's amongst us. But Max said 3 things, 4 of the 3 things. Again, the question I'll reiterate is, what are 3 life lessons you've learned from weightlifting? 1 is to never give up. 2 is to take care of your body. And 3 is don't forget to have fun. And I think these are all interesting things to learn from, because obviously you're in the sport, and most of the people listening to the podcast, most of the people involved in weightlifting, the high level people like Max and such, they're the very small percent, 1-2% of those in the world who can function at that high level. But most rest of us, we do it for the enjoyment of the sport. So things to consider from someone like him, who's been doing it since he was, I forget how old he told me originally when he started, maybe 8 or 9, something like that. But someone who's been doing it for their entire life, you have to make more considerations as to why you're doing it. Obviously, he's a professional, but we are not, and we enjoy it. So we want to take the things. Obviously, we can push ourselves. We can learn what we're going to do, learn how to approach it, and be steadfast in achieving that goal. But also take in light that obviously the stage that we're at, where we're at, and the other components of our life that we have to be focused on as well. So with that lens to, 1, taking care of yourself, because if you try to max out, go heavy all the time, and lift like a nut, and not focus on your technique, not focus on scheduling your training appropriately, you're just going to wear yourself out prematurely. And obviously we enjoy doing it, so we want to continue to do this for a long time. Correct, Mr. Producer?
Correct.
That's how masters train, and that's how we should train. And you want it to be fun. If you take it so seriously, and this goes for everything in life, if you take everything too serious, you're too strict with things, you end up becoming miserable. And then in turn, you realize, like, what am I doing? Like, I know, let's say I have some things, like when I was younger, like let's say when I was racing motocross, one of the bikes that I had, I was having some trouble with it, and as I'd be going to ride it and stuff, I'd be thinking, oh man, is the motor gonna break again? Like I had trouble with the motor, so I was like, is it gonna break again? Is it do this? And I realized, why am I worrying about it? It's riding fine now, the motor's functioning, so worry about it when I have to worry about it. So that way, my mindset changed. I went from being in constant worry, constant stressed, to where, you know what? Right now, nothing bad's happening. Let me just keep going. And a lot of people live their lives where they're worrying about the next thing, worrying about the big thing. Even now, while we're on quarantine, people are worrying about either getting sick or what have you. And granted, it's something to be considerate of, but it doesn't mean worry every moment that tomorrow you're going to be on your deathbed. Right now, just control what you can. Focus on the moment. If you're feeling healthy and you're feeling good, embrace that. Enjoy it. If you get sick tomorrow, then obviously you got to deal with that when it comes, but should it come up, if it even comes up. So sometimes there's no need to worry about things when they're not present. Okay, next on our list, I'm going to skip ahead here. Pyrros Dimas, I asked him, and Pyrros responded with 3 life lessons that Pyrros responded were 3 words, all being the same word: patience, patience, patience. which, as excuse me, as succinct as he is, I think just even those 3 words speak volumes for what his response is. Maybe language barrier, I don't know, but you have to, with everything you do in life, you have to have patience. And if you're patient, you keep your emotions at a calm level. You allow yourself to not get emotionally involved or so emotionally you don't react emotionally to everything, and you focus on a much longer term for whatever you're looking at, whether it be a relationship, a job, a goal, a career, anything like that. Patience to allow things to unfold and to take each little step as you can. Let's say, let's just for example, if you're trying to cut a board in half with a saw, you can't just hack through it. You have to be patient. Every stroke of the saw takes a little more until you're finally through. And that's how everything that you do in life has to be. You can't expect to achieve excuse me, one number on the platform every time. You have to work steadily up to it. Everything in life is a collection, a collection over time. So you can't force things, and you can't force time. And I said it in one of podcasts, and Joel Quintong actually said he really enjoyed the quote that I said, is you can't expedite years by doing more days. You have to allow things to compound as they come naturally. So patience is something to recognize for you to be able to achieve that. Now, so too, to build up on that, most everyone else that had responded, there was always a common trend. There were 2 people who responded that were, I'll get into them at the end, but for the most part, let's say Sarah Robles, she learned that weightlifting isn't just for her. What she's doing helps other people, and there's more to life than weightlifting. Also, weightlifting is hard, but it's a difficult sport, and the difficulty of the sport and what makes weightlifting so particular is you are the only variable. The platform's always the same, the weights are always the same because gravity's always the same, so the variable is you. In team sports, in even other individual sports, let's say type like wrestling or martial arts, there are different variables that afford you leeway. The physics of the universe and the physical world that we live in are constant, and that's what governs and forces everything within. So what makes weightlifting so particular is, 1, how your body's going to feel that day, and 2, how your mind is. And different things, let's say stressors, any sort of stressor, obviously stressor is the big one, is going to affect you differently because you're the variable measured against the constant, as opposed to the other way around, which most every and all other sport, it's the opposite way. And learning to accept that, learning to have the patience for that, learning that there's more beyond the platform, expands your mindset to the scope, from limiting your scope to just that one particular portion of, okay, I have to do this and I have to achieve this goal, and you can't force that right away. Everything's going to be over time. And because of the stress that puts on you, just like Sarah said and just like Max said, you have to remember to have fun. You have to remember there's more to life to lifting, because if you focus so acutely on those each individual goals, you lose the scope of your goals in entirety. You lose the scope of what you're doing as that applies to your life, because now you're not being patient. You're trying to force things when they're not going to come naturally. And again, that's another part of Stoicism, is allowing things to flow into your life when they come in, and be able to coast with them, or whatever, however you'd want to phrase it, and then allow things to go out when they need to go out. Being smooth and fluid, just like lifting on the platform. You got to be smooth and fluid. Okay, now lastly, so that way this podcast doesn't go on for an exorbitant amount of time and I'm not meandering through, I would like to say another common theme amongst everyone asked is passion. Everyone was passionate towards their response and towards lifting. So everyone that I had asked, we have Max Lang, Sabine Kusterer from Germany, Sarah Robles, Pyrros Dimas, Janil Okoeva. So let's say Sabina, Sarah, Pyrros, obviously, Janil, they're Olympians. From Greece, Theodoros, I hope I said that correctly, Theodoros Yakovidis, Norik Vardanyan, Marit Ardelsbacka from Norway, sorry if I butchered that, and Joanna Lachowska from Poland, again another Olympian. They were all, passion all emerged in their responses. because as much again, we'll post a lot of the answers. A couple like so Joanna and Theodoros, their answers are very in-depth, very detailed, very passionate, a lot of heart, a lot of explanation. Too long for me to be able to read here to everybody, but the quality of what they had to say was just so rich that I think it's a privilege to be able to read something like that, and I really appreciate them, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to answer, even however long or little that they decided to put to it. They took the time, and it's appreciated. But again, everyone is incredibly passionate, and it goes to show that if you have any goal in life, you can't just expect to put in 70-80% effort not in order to achieve it. You have to be fully committed to achieving everything you do in life. And you see anyone successful, they're steadfast with that. There's never a point where someone's hoping, relying on somebody else, looking for the government to help you or anything like that. Anything that is and especially again in weightlifting because of the constants and variables, anything you expect to achieve is solely based upon you. And the amount of effort, I think, let's see, Norik said that. Hold on. Let me go through my notes. Where is it? Okay. He said the effort you put in is the result you would get in anything you do, which that's great because that just means anything that you do in life is in direct relationship to the amount of effort that you put in, especially in this country, America. I mean, that really applies, I think, better than anywhere else, because look at, for example, you have immigrants killing themselves trying to come across the border. They don't know a language, they're coming illegally, they have literally nothing when they come here, and they're making a life for themselves. And I know a bunch of people have, let's say, worked with my parents or have met along the way where they come here knowing no English whatsoever. They learn the language in one way, shape, or form, whether it be crude or rudimentary or even proficient. They still learn the language and they do really well for themselves. So when people look to others to accomplish things for them, when they look to avoid pitfalls of their own instead of reflecting on how to accomplish that, you have I don't know where I was going with that, but you can't look. You know where I was going with that, Mr. Producer?
You have to persevere.
Yes, thank you. That was a good way to pull me out of that one. You have to persevere. You can't rely on others to do it for you. You'll always have to rely upon yourself, and especially in this time for the quarantine, with the government doing bailouts and stimulus, you can't rely on that because it's ephemeral, it's artificial, and the more you rely upon yourself and the more you apply to yourself in order to achieve things and set goals in order to achieve and work towards them, be passionate towards achieving that goal and not stopping yourself, as well as accepting the setbacks along the way. Like Norik also said, it's okay to lose, it's okay not to be at the top every time, so long as you, well, let me see. If you don't reach your goals, change your strategy and continue to work after it. And if you don't win them all, overcoming adversity is the best part of it because you learn. So, I mean, that's a lot, and hopefully I wasn't meandering too much with all this, but the message I'd like to get across is that you have to be able to continue to persevere with your goals. You have to continue to push through, and weightlifting has taught many people that, and it's a great teacher for it because there's very few things in life that force you to push through being uncomfortable, being doubtful of yourself, and truly seeing if you want to achieve what you want to achieve than weightlifting. So we'll publish these somewhere. I want to thank Viviana Podolsky from Everyday Lifters for the photos that you guys have seen throughout, as well as Jannica Wally Jensen from Norway, who helped provide pictures as well. Thank you, everybody. And what else? Is there anything else we got?
That is it for now. We'll see you next time.
That is it. We'll see you from the patio again. If it's raining out, we won't see you from the patio. But until next time.